my channel here at Crochet Infusion. Thank you so much for being here today. So in today's tutorial I'm going to be showing you all how to do the Exodus hooded poncho. So for this poncho, I have done this poncho doing it in segments, and I have done each panel. So I've gone from the back panel and then onto the two front panels, connected it all together including with the hood, and now we have finished off using the ribbon stitch. And this is my cat Willow. She has decided to come on here and say hello to you all, so she is sat here with me joining in on this tutorial. So for my model, he is 6'2" tall, and the poncho comes just past his waist. So if you want to just be a little bit longer, I would suggest to make your ribbon at the bottom a little bit longer, just so you get a bit more of a wider ribbon there along the bottom. So it's 2-inch ribbon all the way around. So for the yarns that I have used for this poncho, this is the Lion brand yarn, and this is the 100% superwash merino yarn. I've put a list in the description box for you all for how many skeins of yarns you're going to need. If you do decide that you want your ribbon to be a bit longer at the end, I definitely recommend just an extra skein, just to be on the safe side that you've got enough, depending on how much wider you would like your ribbon to be at the end. So also with this poncho, you will notice that the front and the back is not connected anywhere underneath here at the sides. It is completely open, so that is an optional choice. And I'll just quickly show you how it is open. So it just basically sits over, so it just sits over the front and the back. So the back, obviously at the back, and then the two front panels at the front, and then with the hood. So anyway, that is it, and I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. Okay, so these are the chosen colours that I'm going to be using. I'm going to be starting with the Marmalade colour first, and then we'll go on to the Hemp, and then later on we will go on to the Denim colour, which will be later on. So I'll move that over there and we can use that later. And then I'm also going to be using a size 5.5mm crochet hook. But just before we begin, I'm just going to show you quickly how this is going to work, just so you've got a good idea of what we're actually doing here. So we're going to start down here, which is going to be in the Marmalade colour. We're going to work 21 rows, and then we're going to go 3, 1, 3, and the 3, 1, 3 is going to be 3 in the Hemp, 1 Marmalade, and then 3 again back to the Hemp. And then we go on to doing more rows of just Marmalade, and that's going to be 17 rows, and then 3, 1, 3 again, back to 17, back to 3, 1, 3, and then back to 21 rows again. So that is the back panel. So this part here is the back panel only, and then this will be the front panel. So I've kind of drew this out of it weird. So these here are your two front panels, and that open part is where it's going to be open. So I hope that just gives you a good idea of what we're going to do. So we're going to do so many rows in the Marmalade, and then we're going to switch to Hemp, and then one row of Marmalade, back to the Hemp again, and then we switch back to the Marmalade. It's the same stitch throughout consistently as well. As I just mentioned, we are going to be starting in the Marmalade, and I am using a 5.5mm crochet hook. So to begin, we're going to make a chain, and we're going to do a chain of 105. So if you've never made a chain before, I'll just quickly show you how to do that, or how I do my chaining. So I'm just going to gently hold my yarn with this tail end, and that is just going to gently wrap around my finger and then move that off. So now I've got this loop. So this tail end here with that loop, I'm pinching hold with my thumb and finger. That is just gently going to sit behind that loop, and I'm going to pinch at the bottom of that loop, keeping hold of that tail just at the base. And I'm going to hold onto my hook. I'm going to insert my hook into that loop, and that centre strand that's sitting at the back, which is this tail end, that's just there sitting behind. I'm going to insert my hook and gently lift that center piece up and just pull, and that will make a knot. And then you can just hold your yarn and push that up towards your hook so it's sat nice and securely. So then everyone is different to how they hold their yarns. I kind of hold mine a little bit different when I do my chaining to how I do when I actually crochet, so everybody is different. So the way I hold mine for my chaining, I just like to keep hold of the yarn just gently over these 4 fingers and just lift up my index finger, and with my middle finger and my thumb I'm going to pinch at the base of where that knot is on that slip knot, and then I'm going to pick up my yarn. And the way I pick my yarn up, I just simply sit my yarn underneath the strand and just gently curl my hook so it kind of grips on, and then I pull through the loop that's already on my hook. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm just going to keep chaining now till I get to 105 and I'll meet you back. Okay, so now I've got my chain of 105, so now I'm going to change the way I hold my yarn, which isn't much different to how I was holding it before anyway. So these 3 fingers here, I'm just going to gently place the yarn over those 3 and then around that index finger, and then same again with my middle finger and my thumb, I will just hold there like so. So now I'm going to do a double crochet as I'm working in US terminology. So I'm going to yarn over my hook and I'm going to go into that 3rd chain from the hook. So 1, 2 and then 3. So yarn over your hook and then work into that 3rd chain by inserting your hook and then picking up your yarn, pull that through, 3 loops on your hook, and then you're going to pick up the yarn again, pull through the first 2 loops, pick up your yarn again and pull through the last 2 loops that's on your hook. So now you've got double crochet into that 3rd chain. So then we're going to skip the next chain and then we're going to go into that next chain. So we skip 1, work into the next, and you're going to do a single crochet. Be careful not to go through both of those strands, you're only going through 1 strand of that chain. So insert your hook, pull the yarn through, 2 loops on the hook, and then pick up your yarn and pull through those 2 loops. So that's your single crochet. And then we're going to do a double crochet into that same place as we did the single. So then we're going to do another double. So yarn over your hook and pull your yarn through, 3 loops on the hook, pick up your yarn again and pull through 2, pick up the yarn again and pull through 2. So we've now got a double, we skip 1, 1 single and 1 double, and then we skip 1 again, working into the next chain again. We're going to work a single and then we're going to work a double again into that same chain as your single. And that is how this grit stitch is worked. We just do 1 single, 1 double, and we skip 1 chain, but it is slightly different at the end of the row and the beginning of the row. So we're going to do that again with you just a few more times. So we're going to skip this next one and work into the next, insert your hook, pull your yarn through, 2 loops on the hook, picking up your yarn, pull through those 2 loops, and then yarn over into that same chain, insert your hook, pull your yarn through, 3 loops on the hook, picking up your yarn again, pull through 2, and then we're going to pull through the last 2 again, and then we skip 1 again and then into the next. So we're just going to keep working like this all the way to the end of the chain. I'll meet you back when I get to near the end of that chain. So skip 1 and then into the next and work a 1 single and then work a 1 double into that same chain and then skip the next. So I'll meet you back once I get near to the end of this chain. Okay, so I'm just near at the end of my foundation chain. I've got 2 chains left. So the reason for that is we're going to skip the next chain and then you're going to work a 1 single crochet into that very last chain, just a 1 single on its own. And then once you are done with that, you want to just go back and count your stitches and just make sure you have got 102 stitches in total. So the best way to count your stitches is when you turn your work towards you slightly, you will be able to just see where your stitches are, and you're just going to count those all the way along, and you should have 102. So I'm just going to finish the end of row 1 by finishing with a 1 single crochet. So I'm going to skip the next, so I've worked a single and a double, so it's skip the next stitch as normal, and then just work a 1 single crochet into that very last chain, and then we're going to do 1 single and chain 1, and then return our work. So now I'm working onto row 2. So to start off on row 2, we're going to start by doing a double crochet into that very first stitch right here. So I'm going to yarn over my hook, and I'm going to go into that very first stitch and make a 1 double crochet, and that is my first double crochet. And then I'm going to skip the next stitch, and then into the next stitch here along we're going to do a single, and then we're going to work a double. And then we're going to skip the next stitch and work a single, and then we're going to work a double. And each row you will have 102 stitches, so just be mindful of counting your stitches, as it's easily to miss a stitch or go wrong somewhere. It can be done, so just to always be aware of that, you've got 102 stitches in total. So you're just doing a 1 single and a 1 double in the same stitch as we did on row 1. So we just skip the next and then work into that next stitch. So I'll meet you back once I get to the end of this row 2. Okay, so I'm just coming to the end of row 2. So I'm just going to do my last single and double in that same stitch, and then again we're going to skip this next one here, and then we're going to work into the turning chain. So we're just going to make sure we get into that turning chain and make a 1 single crochet. So just make sure you go into that turning chain and work a 1 single, and then chain 1, and then turn your work for row 3. And now we're going to start the row same as we always do, with a double in that very first stitch, and then we're going to repeat this all over again for a 1 single and a double, skipping 1. So we skip 1, 1 single, 1 double, and then skip 1 again, and then work a 1 single and a 1 double. So I'm going to continue like this now for another 18 more rows. So this is row 3, we want to get that to row 21, so I'll meet you back at the end of row 21. Okay, so I'm just at the end of row 21. So this is how mine is looking, and during those rows I have had to attach new skein to this to get that 21 rows. So when you reach to the end of row 21, it will be time to change colour to go into the hemp, which will be worked for a further 3 rows. So what we do here, if you've had to reattach on your yarn, the colour change works exactly the same. So in case you're struggling with that a little bit, I'm just going to quickly show you. So as normal, we skip that stitch, and then we work into that turning chain and go as if you're going to make a single crochet, as if you normally would. Now it wouldn't matter if you're somewhere along this stitch here, but if you are on a single and you know you haven't got enough to complete it in a double, then when you just need to undo that double and go back and just do the single and reattach your yarn during the single. It's much easier to attach yarn on during a single than it is with a double. So as I said, I will go to make my single crochet, but I'm not going to complete this stitch in this colour Now this would work the same if I was attaching on a new yarn. So all I will do is pick up my next skein, whether it would be a new colour or whether it's going to be the same colour. So you want to attach that over your hook, and then you want to pull your yarn through these 2 loops to complete your single crochet and then chain 1. However, if you are working during a stitch, you don't need to do your chain 1. It's only chain 1 when you're going to turn your work. So then you would carry on in going into the next stitch, you would yarn over and make your double crochet, and with your tail ends that you would have 2 of the same colour, you will just work those tail ends in. Or if you're on a colour change, you are going to need to do your chain 1 and you are going to need to turn your work to go to the next row, which will be row 22. So now I'm on row 22. I'm going to yarn over and I'm actually going to work this hemp tail in. So I'm going to go into that very first stitch, just like we have been on the other rows, and just secure that marmalade a little. So then make your double crochet as if you normally would from all the other rows, except for this time we're in a new colour. So we're going to work on this hemp for 3 rows. That's going to take us to row 24. So we're going to skip the next stitch and do a single crochet into that next stitch. So skip 1, work a single, and then work your double into the same stitch. It is exactly the same as the other rows that we've already been doing, so by now you should be pretty familiar with the grit stitch. So you're just going to continue working your grit stitch all the way along for 3 more rows, which will take you to row 24. And what I like to do here is simply cut this tail at the, you don't want to cut loads of the tail, but just enough for weaving in your ends. So just about this amount of yarn is good enough for weaving in for later. And then just continue on in your new colour. And as I said, I do work in this tail end of the new colour or of the new yarn, depending on whether you're on a colour change or whether if you are just needing to reattach new yarn. So I'm going to keep working like this now till I get to row 24, and then I will meet you back. So I'm just finishing off on the second row here, and I just thought I'd quickly come on just to show you that you really need to take extra care that you don't go accidentally into this stitch here thinking that that is the turning chain, because it's actually not. So your turning chain is actually at the side just here, and you just want to go through that turning chain and then work your single crochet. So you don't want to be going through this way here, because that is not the right place. So this here at the side where your turning chain is, see, that was wrong. So you don't want to go through like that. You just want to make sure you actually go into that turning chain, and then you can complete that one single crochet and chain 1 and turn and carry on as you normally would. So this is my last row now, so I'll meet you back once I've got to the end of this row. Okay, so I'm at the row 24 and I've done 3 of the hemp, so now I'm ready to attach, and don't finish that last single crochet in that turning chain, because now it's time to attach back to marmalade, but we're only going to do the marmalade in just 1 row. So I'm just going to attach my new colour, same way as always, just by gently placing your yarn over your hook and then pulling through those 2 loops to complete your single crochet and then chain 1, and then you're going to turn your work. And once you've turned your work, you're then going to do your double crochet, that very first one on its own at the very first stitch. So yarn over and make your double crochet, and then continue with the stitch as you normally would, and I'll meet you back at the end of this row. Okay, so I'm just finishing here at the end of row 25, about to reattach back onto the hemp for another 3 rows. So once you've done your 3 rows of the hemp, you're then going to do switching back to Marmalade, and you're going to do that for 17 rows. So I'll meet you back at the end of that 17th row. That's going to be a total of 20 rows. So you've got 3 rows of hemp, 17 rows of Marmalade, and I will meet you back at the end of those rows, and you will be at row 45. Okay, so I'm just coming to the end of my 17th row at row 45, so I'm just going to finish this last few stitches that I have here to do, and then we're going to switch back to hemp, and we're going to do that for 3 rows, then 1 Marmalade, and then back to 3 rows of hemp again. So I'm just coming to the end. I'm just going to put my last, that half kind of single crochet before we switch colour. So now I'm ready to switch back to the hemp. So we're going to do our stripe, and chain 1, and then turn our work. So now we're going to move on to row 46, which is for our second stripe, so which is technically 7 rows, so it'll be 3 rows of hemp, 1 row of Marmalade, back to 3 rows of hemp again. So we're just going to carry this on as we were before, and this is going to be the centre stripe that we're working on now. So what we're going to do now is put these 3 rows in of your hemp, 1 Marmalade, and then back to hemp again, and I'll meet you back at the end of that 3rd row of the hemp, so on the 7th row of the stripe. So I'll meet you back then. Okay, so now at row 52, and at the end of this row 52, on the last stitch, you're going to switch back to Marmalade, and then we're going to work a further 17 more rows, which will give us a total of 69 rows in total from the beginning up to there, up to 17 extra. So what we've done here, we've done 21, 7, and then we've done 17, back to 7, and then we're back to 17 plus 7, which will take us to row 76. So the total of the rows for this whole piece is actually 97. So if you wanted to carry on further and you feel confident to carry on further, you are going to do 17, 7, and then you will do 21, and that will give you 97 rows. However, I'm just going to work to an extra 17 rows, so that will give me 69, and then I'm going to do the stripe of the extra 7, which will take me to 76. So I will meet you back at row 76, so it's going to be 17, and then you're going to work your stripe, which is 313. So it's just 17 and then 313. So 17 plus 7, so that'll be 76. So I'll meet you back at the end of row 76. So I've now reached at row 76, and now I'm going to switch back to the Marmalade colour. So once you have switched back to your Marmalade colour, you're then going to work for another 21 more rows, and that will give you a total of 97 rows in total, and that will be the end of the back panel, and then we will then move on to the 2 front panels. So I'm just now switching back onto the Marmalade, and then once your new colour is attached, you then do your chain 1 as always, and then turn your work, and remember to cut your tail of the previous colour as you don't need it, but leave enough for your weaving in your ends. So I will meet you back once I have reached row 97 at the end of row 97, which is 21 more rows, and that will be the back panel completed, ready to move on to the 2 front panels. Okay, so I've done 97 rows in total, and what I've done here is I've just gone and done a single crochet in that very last turning chain and done a chain 1, and then cut your yarn. So once you've done your chain 1, you're going to pull the yarn, and then you're just going to pull to secure it. It'll feel like a little knot, and that will secure to your workpiece. So then that's 97 rows in total, and then we can open this out. And you're going to have tail ends. Now I have made a start on doing my tail ends. As you can see, where this mustard is finer on one side and it's wider on the opposite side. Now that is just solely because of the way the stitch is. So this here with the wider mustard is going to be the outer side, and this thinner piece is going to be the inner side. So what I like to do when I'm weaving my ends in, so if it's hemp, it's going to go through the opposite side. I'm going to take my tapestry needle and post it through this side, so it's on this side, and I'm going to weave my ends in on the hemp. And same as the mustard, weave your ends in on the mustard on the inside, so it's nice and flush on the outside. So I've only got this one, not many left to do now, so this is another strand that needs to be weaved in. So I'm just going to do this last one with you, but as you can see it's the corner one anyways, but again I'm going to weave it onto the inside anyway. So just attach your tapestry needle, and it's entirely up to you how you're going to weave your ends in, but as long as you do them securely. So all I'm going to do here is, because this is on a corner, I'm just going to literally go down this way and through the fibre and just pull that through. And you can, you know, take as many down as you like as you get working through the fibre. You can go across, down, up, as long as you keep going back through where you've already gone. So as you can see, I've just gone down this way. I'm going to go back up through to the same way, but coming in by a different direction, and that's just going to help to secure things into place. And just be sure that the hemp yarn goes through the hemp yarn and the mustard goes through the mustard, not the mustard over the hemp, because you will see that and you don't want that. So you want it to be quite nicely finished. So I'm just going to go through it again. So as you can see, I've weaved back and forth basically just to get that nicely weaved in, and you can't see it on the opposite side, and you can't actually really see it on the inside either. So once you have finished weaving your ends in, it is entirely up to you if you want to block your back panel while you're working on your front panels. That is absolutely up to you. However, I will be blocking mine, and I'm going to use a garment steamer, simply due to the nature of the yarn. Depending on what yarn you're using will determine on how you're going to block yours. When you're happy with your sewing in, just cut that strand and that can go in the bin. So this can now be blocked. So when you're going to block it, if you are going to block it, you need something sturdy to sit your work on. If you don't have blocking boards, you could maybe use a piece of cardboard or something. And if you are going to steam block with a garment steamer, just be careful not to burn your hands or anything, and secure the pins. And you can just do little section by section as you go and move it into place, into shape, and just put your pins in. Bearing in mind this will it can stretch if you want it to stretch, but I wouldn't overstretch because that will stretch the stitches out and you don't really want that. So you just want it kind of relaxed when you are blocking it, so it's still nice and in shape, and it just makes it a little bit more nicer finishing touch to that. So I'll be back and show you how to do the two front panels. We're going to start with the left front panel first, and then we'll be working on the right panel. Okay, so we're now ready to begin on the front left panel, and to do your front left panel we are going to be using the same hook as the back panel, which is a 5.5, and I'm also going to be starting in the Marmalade. So we're going to begin by making a slip knot, and you're going to chain 105. So make your slip knot and simply chain 105. I'll meet you back once I've got 105 chains. So once you've got your chain of 105, we're going to be working on the grit stitch again, so it's the same stitch for the two front panels as it is for the back panel. So we're going to do a double crochet into the third chain from the hook. So we're just going to count 3 chains from your hook, and we're going to work a double crochet. So we're going to go 1, 2 and 3, yarn over your hook and make your double crochet into that third chain. So those two skipped chains, it will count as a single crochet. So then we're going to skip the next chain, and then we're going to work a single and then a double, and it's the same as what we've been doing for the back panel. So I'm just going to keep going until I get to the end of this row, and then I will meet you back once I've completed this row. So just one double and one single in every other chain. So skip one and then work again. Okay, so I'm at the end of my first chain, so this is the row 1. I've got 2 chains left, and like always we skip one, and then we're just going to do a 1 single crochet into that very last chain, and then we will do a chain 1. So this stitch, you should now have a total of 102. However, if you are counting the skipped 2 chains, which is actually count as a stitch, so theoretically you've actually got 103 stitches in total, not 102. However, I like to just say 102 because I find it's easier for me to work with that rather than 103. So I don't want to confuse you here, but I think I may have confused you a little bit on the first video. But you do count, it's just because you count those 2 missed stitches at the beginning that entirely gives you 103, but it's actually in fact 102. So chain 1 and turn your work, and then we're going to work the next row. So this is going to be a total rows of 21 rows in total. So we've already done 1 row, so that's 20 rows left to go. So I will meet you back at the end of that 20th row, and you will have theoretically 102 stitches. So it just depends on whether you want to count those 2 in or not. But for me, I tend to just not count the missing 2 chains. It's just the way I work. So it's just a 1 double crochet into that first stitch, and then you're going to skip 1 stitch, and then you're going to work 1 single, and then you're going to work a double, and just keep working like the way we did on the first panel. So just keep going until you've got a row of 21 rows in total. As I said, we've got 20 more rows that's including this row. So I'll meet you back at the end of row 21. Okay, so I'm now at row 21, and now we're at row 21, we're going to complete the last stitch into that turning chain with using the hemp. So same as what we did for the back panel, we insert our hook into that turning chain, pull your yarn through, 2 loops on the hook, just drop your marmalade and attach on your next colour or chosen colour. In my case is hemp. I'm going to pull that through those 2 loops and chain 1 and simply turn our work. So we're just going to do the 1 stripe, so it's going to be 3 rows of hemp, 1 row of marmalade, back to 3 rows of hemp again, and that will take us to row 28. So it's only 7 rows for the stripe. So we're going to go into that very first stitch and make a double crochet in the hemp colour, and continuing on with the grit stitch as we have been throughout with the back panel. So I'll meet you back at the end of row 28 and let you know what we need to do next. So it's just 7 rows in total, 3 rows of hemp, 1 row marmalade, and back to 3 rows of hemp again. Okay, so at the end of row 28, which would have been here, I've actually gone on further because this is the end of the panel, of the left side panel. So you're going to do another row of 10, and that's going to take you to 38. So the whole of these rows is actually 38 rows in total. So once you've finished row 28, you're going to do another 10 rows, and at the end of the 10th row, just come back to this part of the video and then I'll show you what we're going to do next. Okay, so at row 38 on your left side of your panel, you're now going to do a single crochet into that turning chain, and we're going to fasten off. So make your single crochet and then chain one, and just take your scissors, fit a length of yarn and give that a cut, pull that through and just tighten that on slightly. That can be, your ends can now be weaved in on this panel. We are going to make pockets, but we'll do them later on. So now we need to work on the right side of the panel. So the right side of the panel is actually basically pretty much the same as this panel, except for it's a little bit different. So here we finished with 10 rows. So we started with 21 and we finished with 10. For the right side of the panel, you are going to do 10 and finish with 21. So I hope that makes sense. So basically you're going to start with 10 and finish with 21. So it's the opposite to what we've already just done, basically. So it's the same chain, 105, and then you're going to work 10 rows and then work your stripe and then finish with row 21 rows, and that'll be a total of 38 rows in total. So make your second panel and I'll be back and show you what you need to do next. Okay, so I just wanted to quickly pop back here and just remind you that once you've done your chaining of 105, you're then going to do your double crochet into the third chain from the hook. So I just wanted to remind you of that because it's very easy to forget about those kind of things when you are working. So it's going to be a double crochet into the third chain from your hook and continue with the grit stitch as you have been. So we're then going to skip the next chain and work a single and then a double crochet in that same chain, and same as we have been for the back panel and the left side panel, it's the same stitch throughout. So remembering that you're only going to do 10 rows and then you're going to do your 7 rows for your stripe, which is 313, and then you're going to end with row 21 rows at the end of your right panel. So it's going to be 10 rows to begin and then ending with 21, and I'll meet you back at the end of that 21st row. So that's a total of 38 rows altogether. Okay, so this is now the second front panel now done. So that's 2 panels, so you've got a front left and a front right panel, and as I mentioned earlier in the video, you're going to start with 10 rows and then you're going to finish with 21. On the first panel you start with 21 and you finish with 10. So it's a total of 38 rows in total, because obviously you've got your stripe as well. So now it's a case of weaving in your ends, and then if you wanted to, you can block your work and also don't forget to fasten off. So I'm just about to fasten off here, so I've done a single crochet and then a chain 1. So just single crochet as we always do in that turning chain, chain 1, and just cut a bit of yarn for weaving. And just pull that through, and that will secure that. When you pull that tight, it makes a little knot, and then you can just weave your tails in. And now we're going to work on for the hood. Okay, so for the hood we're now going to do a chain. I've made my chain already, and you're going to do a chain of 83. So once you've got your chain of 83, you're then going to do the grit stitch again, and we're going to do a double crochet into the third chain from the hook, remembering that you end your last stitch will be a single crochet on the very last chain, chain 1 and turn, same as we have been throughout. So for the hood you want to work 60 rows. I'll meet you back once I've got to the 60th row, and just to measure that. So it should be 20 inches width and 18 inches in high. So I'm just going to work into the third chain from the hook, 1, 2, 3, and work a double crochet to start off the grit stitch. And same as we always do, we skip one and work a 1 single and then a double. So keep working like this for each of your rows. I'll meet you back once I've reached 60 rows and let you know how many more rows we might need to do, or we probably may not need to do more than that. So I'm going to keep working until I've reached 60 rows and then I'll be back. So I'm at now 60 row and I'm just having a look at this, and I'm actually just at 14 and a half, slightly just over 14 and a half inches, so we need to do a few more inches to get it to 18. So I'm going to go ahead with another 12 rows on top of the 60. So I'm going to meet you back when I get to row 72. So I'm just going to do another 12 rows and then I will meet you back. Okay, so I'm now at the end of 72 rows, so I'm just going to finish with a single crochet in this very last stitch here, and then just do a chain one and fasten off. And if you want to, you can always block this piece as well, and then we can work on the pockets. I'm just going to cut a small bit of a length for sewing, weaving in that later. Just fasten off and then I'll be back to show you what we need to do next for the pockets. Okay, so we're now going to start working on the pockets, and for your pockets we're going to start with a chain of 23. So make your slip knot and make a chain of 23. I'm using the same hook as I have been throughout for this whole project. So I'm just going to make a chain of 23. I'll meet you back once I've got a chain of 23. Okay, so once you've got your chain of 23, we're going to do a double crochet into the third chain from the hook, because we're going to continue on doing the grit stitch. And we're going to do 3 rows in the marmalade colour, and then we're going to do the stripe. So with the stripe it's 3 1 3, so it's 3 rows of hemp, 1 row of marmalade, back to 3 rows of hemp again, and then we're going to do 3 rows of marmalade for the last row. So it's only a total of 13 rows, so it's just 3 rows of marmalade, then we do the stripe, and then another 3 rows of marmalade, and I'll meet you back at the end of that 13th row. Okay, so once you've done all 13 rows and you're doing your last single crochet, you then want to do a chain 1 and just simply cut the yarn, and then you're going to sew all your ends in before moving on to the next piece, just because it's easier once everywhere sewn in. Once all your ends are weaved in, we can then work on working all the way around this piece and then preparing for a rib top to go on the pocket. So I'm just going to insert my hook facing it with the right side. So for the right side facing, you will notice how the centre stripes look slightly different from one side to the other. So this in fact is the wrong side, and this here is the right side. Another way to tell is with your tail end when you first started, but you may have already sewn that in. So if you're struggling for right side and wrong side, this is the right side where this stripe here is slightly wider. Now you want to turn your work so it's facing this way now, so your stripes are vertical, not horizontal no more. So I'm going to put my hook into this first corner here, because I'm going to start from here and work all the way around, back to the beginning again. So all I'm going to do, attach my yarn to my hook. You can do this several ways, but I like to just simply place the yarn over the hook and pull through the loop, and then I'm going to chain 1. Now I'm going to do 2 single crochets into that same place. So I'm going to insert my hook, and with my tail end I'm just going to rest that over my hook, and I'm going to crochet that in. I'm going to do 1 single crochet and then 2 single crochet. I'm just going to go into each stitch all the way around and doing 1 single crochet. Now this side is fairly easy because we're just working going on top of the stitches that we've already done. So that's no drama. So we can just keep working around until we get to the next corner, and then we'll do another 2 single crochets. So I'm just going to keep working a single crochet, and this is just to give it a bit of a finishing on the pockets. So you're going to need to do 2 of these pockets. So everything that we're doing on here, you're going to need to do for your second pocket as well. So just keep going into each stitch, and here we're coming to the end. So I want to make sure I get into both of those strands on that corner, and I'm going to do 2 single crochets into that same space. And now here, this is where it gets a little bit complicated, because this is the side of what we were doing. So it's a case of just trying to put your stitches in as evenly as you can. So I like to go in to the actual stitch. So if you just kind of look, you've got just one strand. I don't like just going through one strand, so I want to go through both of those strands. So some of your stitches, and again here, going through both of those strands. And I think it just makes it a bit more secure and a little bit more nicer finishing, rather than just going through the one strand. So I'm going to go through both of those strands, and as you can see, we've got another one right here, and it's just a case of trying to keep them nice and even as you're working around. So I'll meet you back once I've got all the way around this whole piece. Remember, 2 single crochets in each corner. And I'll meet you back once I've got all the way around. Okay, so once you've gone all around on your single crochet and you've put 2 single crochets in each corner, when you get to this last corner here, you're going to do a slip stitch and a chain 1 and just fasten off. Okay, so now I'm going to change colour, and I'm going to be using this denim blue colour, and this is going to be for the border for the top of the pocket. So to do that, I'm going to go into that very first stitch, insert my hook, and I'm going to place the yarn over my hook and simply pull that through, chain 1 and turn your work. So now we're going to go into the back loop only single crochet. So I'm actually just going to go into the same stitch and work a back loop. So the way to do this is just to tilt your work so it's facing you and find that back loop. So there's 2 loops, and then there's the back loop, and make your single crochet into that same stitch, and then going into the next stitch, working 1 single crochet, back loop only, all the way across. So I'll meet you back once I get to the end of this row of doing 1 single crochet, back loop. Okay, so once you've finished working your single crochet into the back loop only, you can now definitely distinguish that this is the back side of the pocket. So the way to distinguish that is you will notice that this centre piece here is finer on the back than what it is on the front. So once you've done your back loop single crochet all the way across, you're then going to turn your work. So then you want to turn your work, and now we're going to do a chain, and we're going to work a chain of 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then last one for 6. So once you've got your chain of 6, you then skip that very first chain, and you're going to go into the next and work a 1 single crochet into the next 5 chains. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that last one for 5. So you've now got a chain of 5 and 5 single crochets. So now we're going to go into this stitch, and we're going to do a slip stitch. Then we're going to go into the next and do another slip stitch and then turn your work. This time we're going to work back up, so we're going to skip those two that we just did, those two slip stitches. We're going to skip those two and then go into the next stitch, back loop only, and work back up of your single crochet of 5, 2, 3, 4. This last one, on the 5th one, I like to go through both of those loops, not just the one, so I'm going to go through both of those, make a single crochet and chain one, and then turn your work. So now we can work back down again, so then we skip that one and work back down, have a 1 single crochet, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. And then of course we go into the next stitch and make a slip stitch into the next one for your next slip stitch, and then we turn and working back up again. So then once again we're going to skip these two and work a single crochet into that 3rd one. And it's really simple, easy and quite quick to work up. Remembering when you get to that very last one, when you come back up, you're going to go through both of those loops and then work a 1 single crochet, chain 1. And then we're going to skip the first chain and work back down, 5 single crochets, and then 5, and then we're going to do 2 slip stitches into the next 2 stitches. So we're going to go 1 and then 2, and just keep working like this all the way across, and I'll meet you back up once I get to the end here. Okay, so once you're near at the end here and you've done 5 going down, you'll notice you've got 1 more stitch to go. So again, we'll just do 1 slip stitch into that, because we don't have a spare one to do another slip stitch, so just do 1 slip stitch, and then we're just going to skip the 1 stitch only and work our way back up for 5. And then going through those 2 loops on that very last one. So what I'm going to do here now, I'm actually going to do a slip stitch into the same as that stitch that I've just worked into. So normally I would do chain 1, but here I'm just going to do a simple slip stitch. And I'm actually going to do a slip stitch into the next stitch and then each stitch across. So just doing 1 slip stitch all the way across the whole of the top, and then when you get to the corner it's going to be 2 slip stitches into there, and then work your way back down to the side there, and I'll meet you back once I get back to here. Okay, so I've just gone around from here, I put 2 slip stitches, I did a single crochet in this slip stitch, and then I did a slip stitch all the way across, and I've just done 2 slip stitches to this end here. So now we're just going to work down the side in a slip stitch, and then we'll finish off at the very last stitch. So just work your way down the side, and all this is really, it's just to give it a little bit of a finishing touch, final finish to the pocket. So into that very last one, and do a chain 1 and simply cut your yarn. So once you are happy, and you can just go ahead and chain 1 and fasten that off. You can, if you want to, you could always block this pocket if you want to before you attach it on. So So now it's time to start sewing this together with the front panels to the back panel. So the back panel is, the outside is facing towards myself, and then I've got the two front panels is the inside of these panels facing towards myself. So the outside of the panels is actually facing onto the outside. So two outsides facing together, basically. Hope that makes sense. So then on the back of the back panel will be the inside, and then this here is the inside. And as you can see, I've got the larger side section that is on the outer side of the poncho. So then we will attach this running across to that side and then running across on that side as well, and then we can attach the hood and then start working on the border, same as the ribbon as what we did for the pockets, and then we'll attach it all together. Okay, so for sewing your piece together, you're going to want a length of yarn, like I've got here, and attached to your tapestry needle. And as I said before, you could always use stitch markers if you wanted to make sure everything's in place. Just be careful not to run off if you're not using stitch markers. Just make sure everything is lined in at the best that you can before you actually begin. So I'm actually going to start from this end down here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to insert the tapestry needle through both sides, and I'm just going to pull that all the way through, leaving a bit of a tail. And I'm actually going to go through that same place again. To attach this on quite securely, and I'm actually going to go through that loop as well, and that's just solely just so it's nice and secure. So then just pull that quite taut, and then that's now attached. So all we're going to do now is doing what's known as a whip stitch. So with a whip stitch, you're just working back through the same side as you started. So just holding your piece nice and comfortably, and as I said, make sure your stitches are lined up, and you can always use a stitch marker, which is quite handy too. So I'm just going to stitch mark right on that stripe, right there on that mustard stripe, and I'm going to go right from here, just going through the stitches along the top, and just working my way all the way to that stitch marker, and then all the way to the very end. So then you're going to go again, taking it from this side, the side that you've already started, and then up through to the next side. And you're just going to keep working like this all the way along the whole of the top of your front panel. And just make sure your stitches are lined up. So I'm just going to keep working like this now until I get to that stitch marker, and then I'll carry on. So I'll meet you back once I've got this panel completely sewn together. So I just thought I'd quickly come back on here just to quickly tell you that I actually only worked in the Marmalade to here, and then I did a loop, and I went through the loop and gone through and secured the tail ends in, simply because I want to attach these the hemp stripes in the hemp colour, and then again with the Marmalade colour. So I'm just going to reattach back now through here. So I'm just going to pull that through, and I'm going to go back through again. So for this time I'm going to go through the loop, and that's how I finish as well, except for I go through twice, not once, when I finish that off. So that's nice and secure. and I'm just going to continue on back with the marmalade, back through and then up to the end, and then I'm going to go back again in the hemp to finish those two sections off, just so the colour matches in nicely. Okay, so once you've got to the end there, I've just gone back over slightly, and now I'm going to fasten this off and secure it. So all I'm going to do is go through and through to there, and I'm going to go through one more time through that loop and just pull, and then you can just weave this through. Don't want to go too far in to there, you just want to go along the top of these stitches and just go weave it in, and then same as like I always do, go back the opposite way to the same direction I just came from, and then I can safely cut. And then that is that seam done, and as you can see it leaves a lovely seam when you do the whip stitch. So I'm going to finish off in these bits here, and then I'm going to go and do the opposite side, and then I'll be back. Okay, so once the front panels are attached to the back panel, you can now quite happily turn this the right way round. So I'm just going to turn this the right way, and now we can work on attaching the hood, working across the top for the hood. Okay, so once you've got your hood, you want it to be 20 by 18 high, so make sure it's the right way around, and here is my right side. So it doesn't really matter because the stitch is reversible anyway, so that could be just preference on how you want yours to do. So to begin, we're going to fold it in half, and then once we fold it in half, we're just going to sew across the top and then a little bit down here just to cut that bit off to make that hood, and then we will then sew this bottom piece to the main poncho. So once again, you might want to use stitch markers here to make sure that your stitching going across is nice and even with both sides, so make sure you line that up the best that you can, and then just work a whip stitch like we have been for when we attach the front panels to the back panel. Okay, so I'm just coming to the end of sewing this top piece in, and as you can see I've just put some pins in here, some dress pins, just so we know when we come to sew here we're just going to sew down on like a little bit of a diagonal. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of your stitches across of the main of the stitch, of the grit stitch. So just place some dress pins if you want to, or you can just kind of gauge it a little bit if you like. I'll just measure it for you. So that's actually 3 inches across, and then just work down in a bit of a diagonal coming down for the hood. So the way I'm going to do mine is I'm just going to weave my tail through the top of these stitches. Just so I get over to this side here. I'm just going to come out here, and then I can turn my work and start working my way down. So I'm just going to go all the way through each of the stitch just by going in and then bringing a tapestry needle back through, like so. And I'm just going to keep working like this all the way along. And then every time I've reached a certain point, I can move one of my dress pins out of the way. So as long as you're going through the whole of the piece. Okay, so I've ended here and I'm just going to now fasten this off. So I'm just going to go back in and just go through some of the stitches and make a little knot. And then I can just weave this piece in just by going through the stitches, which doesn't really matter because this is the inside of the hood anyway, so we will be turning this the other way round. So I'm just going in any direction just to try and weave those ends in. Until you feel happy that it's all nice and secure. And then you can just cut the remaining piece and then simply turn your hood the right way round, which is this way, and then you have that lovely seam going on at the back. Let's try and lay that out for you. And then this is now ready to be attached to the rest of the poncho. Okay, so now we're ready to attach the hood to the main piece of the poncho. So I've got my poncho, this is the back of the poncho, and these two pieces here is the front of the poncho. So what we're going to do here now is fold your hood, so make sure it's the right way round, so the inside of the hood is there. And then once you've done that, you want to fold it in half and make sure it is in line very well, and place a stitch marker right on the center of where it's folded. So we're going to sew from this side here, from this center, and we're going to work around to the on the inside of the actual front panels. So just doing one side, and then we're going to do the next side exactly the same on the opposite side, so at least you know from where your center of the hood is, and you're going to go one way and then go the other way. Okay, so now I'm at the first corner. I'm just going to simply turn my work and follow these stitches all the way down. So you just want to make sure that the stitches are lined up the best that you can. If you feel you need to put extra stitch through on this corner, by all means do so. I just have just here just put two in that same one, just to make sure it's gonna curl round nicely. And just keep going from one side to the other, you doing your whip stitch, going around, and you just want to make sure it's following and lining up at the best that you can. And the same as when you've finished, you want to make sure you fasten off nice and decent, and then weave your tail ends in. Well, I say decent, I mean securely. So just keep going and then work on the opposite side, going across that way. And it's always best when you're working on big pieces like this, it's always good to move your work around as you're working. It's just easier, you can see where you're going, and it's getting in a bit of a fuss, and I just thought I'd just mention that in case you were getting in a mess with it. So yeah, just don't be scared to move your work around, you know, just give it a good push around and straighten it all out, and you can see where you're actually going when you're sewing the hood onto the piece, because it is a big piece, and you know it can get a bit overwhelming because of how big it is. So if it's your first time for doing something like poncho, you know, I don't want you to feel a threat because of the size of it, you know, what we're working on here, because it's quite a big piece. So anyway, I'm just going to count seaming it down here now. I'm going to do a few more little stitches into there, just a little bit extra secure on these corners, and then I'll meet you back when I'm at the end of this. Okay, so once you've finished going all the way around, it's now time to secure this. So I'm just going to go back through and securely fasten this off. Okay, so my yarn's kind of got a little bit tangled, and it's just because it's wear and tear where I've been working around. So it's just a case of grabbing hold of it and trying to get it back into some decent kind of form again. So once you're happy with that nice and secure, it's just a case of weaving in this long tail end, and I'm just going to go up through the fibres and across onto here. And then I'll probably bring it back down again before I cut. So I just want to make sure it's all nice and secure. And take it back through this way. And then I can just cut the end. So once your hood is attached, it's now a good idea to have a little look at your work and start giving it a little fuss and getting it back how you want it to be, ready before we move on to doing the ribbon all the way around. So we're going to work all the way around the whole of this piece. So we're going to start at the bottom and we're going to work all the way around. So we're going to probably start from the back, bottom, working all the way up, all the way down and around, all of the edging, all the way around the hood and back around this way, and just following the whole thing all the way around in a single crochet. And then we're going to work on the actual ribbon, which we'll do that in a chain the same way as we did with the pockets. So once you've got your piece lined out the way you want to start, this is the outside and then this is the inside. So I've got the outside facing up. I'm going to start down here, and I'm actually going to work into the front loop of each stitch all the way around. So I'm going to insert my hook into that into the back loop, and then put my yarn over my hook, pull through, chain one, and work 2 single crochets into the back loop only. So it's back loop, single crochet in each stitch all around. I only do 2 single crochets here because it's the corner. So moving on to the next stitch, I'm going to go into that back loop. I am actually going to carry this little strand as well, so I'm going to place that over my hook too and work my single crochet, and then going into the next. So you might have to tilt your work slightly to be able to get into that chain, into the front loop. So you're just going to keep working into that front loop only, and I'll meet you back once I get around and show you what we need to do next. So it's just front loop, single crochet. in every single chain or stitch. Okay, so on this front panel here, and then it's leading onto the hood, I'm going to do an increase right into the corner here. So I'm going to put 2 in the next one and 2 into that next one, just so it gets that turn in the best that we can. If you are struggling to get into your stitches, just use your tapestry needle to try and dig those stitches out if they've sunk in a little, and your single crochet should start looking like this. So you've got this groove at the back and it's just at the front like this. So just keep working all the way around, and I'll meet you back once I've finished. But don't forget, in your corners you are going to increase just between the hood and the top of the front panel. Okay, so I'm now nearly finished. I've only just got this last piece to do on the front panel, so I'm just going to work across to there. But before I do, obviously I have a corner here, and I just thought I'd just show you one more time on the corners, just to make sure that you are getting into your corner, because you want your corners to be quite nicely done around. So we're just going to do 2 single crochets into the same stitch, and that will bring you around to be able to go into the next stitch along and continue on with your single crochet. So I'll meet you back once I get to the end of here. Okay, so we've gone all the way around in the denim colour, all the way around in single crochet in the front loop, and then we've done 2 single crochets in each corner for our corners, and we also did an increase just here as well before the starting of the hood, and that was just to help to give it a nice little curve as we're working it. So now we're going to slip stitch to join this round together, because this is where I was before. I had came down here, only had here to go, and I'm going to slip stitch into this first stitch. Okay, so what I'm going to do here now, I'm going to slip stitch into this first stitch here, and then we're going to work all the way up this front panel and then around the hood, and then coming back down the other side of the other front panel. So just simply go through both of those loops now, and we're going to do a slip stitch, and then we're going to do a chain. So now we're going to do a chain of 10. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and last one for 10. So now we're going to skip the first chain, so skip this one and work into the next and do a single crochet. So we're going to have 9 single crochets working down this chain. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9. So once you've gone back down onto 9, we then go to the next stitch and we do a slip stitch, and then we're going to do another slip stitch into the next stitch and then we can turn our work. So now we're going to work back up using the back loops only, but then we're going to skip these first 2 and then work another 9 single crochets back up to your chain or back up your single crochets of the back loop only. So when you get to your last, you can either carry on with the back loop only, or you can go back through both of those loops. In my case, I will be going back through both of those loops just because I feel it secures it a little bit better at the end of your ribbon. So just going through both of those loops and make a single crochet and chain 1 for your turning chain, and then again we're going to work back down into the back loops, and then it's slip stitch in the next 2, and then of course working back again. So we skip this one and we work it into the next, into the back loop, working another single crochet, making sure you've got 9 single crochets, and we're going to do this all the way around one side of this front panel, all the way around the hood, around to the opposite side of the front panel. So I'll meet you back once I get to the other side of this front panel, onto the opposite front panel. So that's 9, and then we skip, we go into the next stitch for a slip stitch, and then slip stitch into the next stitch, and then turn, and then we skip the first 2, 1, 2, and then working into that third back loop only. When you get to the top, remember to do your chain 1 and then turn again. And as I said, this last stitch I go through both of those loops. Okay, so I've gone all the way from sitting down here at the bottom, on the bottom row, I've gone up and around the hood and back down, and now I'm onto a corner. So now we're on this corner here, and you're going to have a corner here, and then you're going to follow back up and back down, and then across the bottom, and then back up and then back down, back over down to here. And then eventually you will make your way back to here. So you need to do, when you come to a corner like I have here, so once you've put your last single crochet row of 9 in, you're then going to do, rather than doing a chain 1 and turning, so you're not going to do chain 1 and turn, so this is the side here that I've worked down, so I've been working down ways. So now I'm going to do a chain of 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then last one for 10, and then I'm going to go back through the chain like I did to begin with, but we're going to work this so the stitches are going to come across the bottom way rather than straight down. We're going to work across to here, and then we'll chain again to do the next turn. So all we'll do is just work your stitch the same as what you normally would by skipping the first chain. So you're going to have 9 single crochets working down. So just work down your chain, so I'm just working down the chain just to quickly show you so you don't get confused on big pieces. So as long as you've got 9 single crochets, and then same as always, we skip, do 1 single crochet. It's not a skip because we've already worked into that, so it's just going into that next stitch for 1 single, 1 slip stitch, and then again for another slip stitch, and then turn and work back up. And that will basically run across the bottom, so your ribbon will be going in a different direction, and then when you get to here again you'll do a chain, and then you'll work back up the way you did on this side initially. So I hope that makes sense to you. So you're just going to carry on, but from in, rather than doing a chain 1 and turning, you're just going to do a chain 10, and then you're going to work your slip stitches into this piece here and then along the bottom, and then the same again when you come to this corner. Okay, so I'm just coming back to show you quickly. I know I've already just explained it, but this is just how it's going to start looking. You will notice obviously that your lines for your ribbon will be going the opposite direction now, so it's going to be, rather than from horizontal now to vertical, so you'll be going across. So I just wanted to put them there in case you were a little bit confused. Okay, so I just quickly wanted to show you here, obviously with the ribbon down here, and then we've done a chain, and then we've carried on going across. So now we're working back up and we're going to do chain from here, so chain and 10 again, and then you're working up that way. Just so you know how to get around the corners, so I just thought I'd add that in here just in case you were struggling a little bit, because yeah, you're going to need to do a chain here. So when you do a chain 10 and then you're going to work going in this direction and then working your way back up. Okay, so this is now the last part of the ribbon. I've just come down, so I've worked all the way around and come down. So you're going to finish your ribbon here at the side, and you're going to do your last stitch going up to here. So as you can just about see that there's just enough there for one more row. So I'm just going to put that last row in, and then that is the ribbon done all the way around, and then we can move on to attaching the pockets and tying in any tail ends that you may have. So I'm just going to do my last few single crochets on this last row, and then I'll be back to show you how to put your pockets on. I'm actually just at the very last stitch now, and I'm just going to fasten off, so as same as I have been, I'm going to go through those 2 loops on this last stitch and make your last single crochet, chain 1, and then you're going to cut some yarn and weave that tail end in, and your corner will then look like this, so it's nice and squared. So this is the first pocket that I've attached, and all I've done here for this ribbon is I've folded it down before I attached it on to the main piece. So you want to fold it over, so make sure your pocket is the right way round first, and then you're going to fold the top of that brim, the ribbon, and you're just going to attach using the same colour yarn that you've used for the top. In my case is Denim. So you're going to sew at the top and the bottom just like that, so you've got this little hole. So the reason for that is because when we attach this to the main piece, you're going to go through in your colour, well in my case Marmalade, and I'm going to attach through there and then carry on attaching, and that's just solely so you can't see the blue on the inside of your work. So you're just going to fold it over nice and neatly, and then just simply just sew a little bit there and a little bit at the bottom and the top. So I'm just going to quickly go through that with you. So just take your tapestry needle from the back and going through that first stitch and then coming out on the opposite side. So it's always best to go from the back coming towards yourself, and just pull your yarn, leave a tail so you can weave that in last. And you're just going to go back through and go back through the other side, so you've gone through that side and that side all the way through. And I like to do this twice, just so it goes through twice, just so it's nice and secure. So when I come up, I'm going in between that stitch, and then going back through, just to make sure that's nice and secure. And then once you're happy and that's nice and secure, you can then just simply just go through the back and just weave the tail in along the back where it can't be seen. So you want to go quite far onto this side. And again, I just go through that loop just so it's secure, and then just do a little bit of weaving, and then you can cut and then do the opposite side. So that's the first thing you need to do for these pockets before you actually attach them on, is just folding the ribbon over by just doing one either side of both sides. So once you are ready to start attaching the actual pocket, you want to make sure you measure it the same as the other side. If this is your second pocket, if it's your first pocket, whatever you do, make sure you take that measurement so the next pocket is exactly the same height as each other. So mine are roughly 2 inches from the bottom of the ribbon from here. So it's roughly 2 inches from the bottom to where I've attached the pocket. So this pocket is now ready to be attached. So what I'm going to do here now, before I begin, I'm going to position my pocket to make sure it is in line with the actual stripe that we did initially. So I just want to sit that on top of there nicely, making sure everything's in place before we go ahead. So the top of the ribbon is now folded and it's just tacked down with a little bit of sewing, and now I'm ready to go ahead and attach this. So I'm going to so make sure your work is, you haven't got anything underneath your sewing, because you don't want to accidentally attach this to the back panel or something. So you're just going to go from the back through the first piece of the fabric and then through that crochet that we did when we did single crochet going around. So you're just going to, I'm going to take that back out because I'm actually going to go just behind that stitch, and you're just going to pull your yarn all the way up, leaving a tail for weaving. So you can leave a tail as long as you wish. So just leave a little tail for weaving, and you can either go across and up, or you can go up, a cut, and then come back down, whichever way feels comfortable for you. There's no right way or wrong way. So once you've come through, you can just go through to the next stitch, and you're just following each stitch and making sure your pocket is straight as you are sewing this on. So we're going to go through that one more time on that very first corner, just so it's nice and secure. And you're just going to keep working around the pocket, using your stitches as a guide for each stitch you do. You're just going to go back through, and I'm going to go this way, and you just kind of want to make sure that your stitching is lined the best that you can. I mean, it can be awkward, so you might have to keep holding it in places to making sure that you are going in the right direction, because it's very easy to go off when you're attaching pockets to garments. So just take your time and the job will be done in no time. So I'll be back once I've attached my last pocket to my poncho. Okay, so once both of your pockets are attached on, then you just want to go around and double check all your ends are all weaved in nice and securely, and then that is the end of this project. I hope you've enjoyed today's tutorial with making this poncho. Hope you've enjoyed it as much as I did, and also if you haven't already, please do subscribe and you will be notified when I upload any new tutorials. So if you have made this poncho, please feel free to share it. You can share it on my Facebook Crochet Infusion, or you can share it where you want to, but please do have me in there so I get to see yours turns out, as well as I look to see how yours turns out. So thank you all so much. Bye.